Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brighter Together podcast. My guest today is Pearl Moses. Pearl is the Director of School Counseling at Pembroke Pines Academy Village Charter High School, and that's in Pembroke Pines, Florida. Pearl, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So let's have you just start by telling everybody a little bit about what you do and about the school that you work for.
So I oversee the school counseling department at a high school, which includes 5 school counselors. And I basically handle all of the school counseling that goes on for our students. And that includes academic support, social emotional support, support for families, for students and their parents, etc.
Very nice, very nice. And so what would you say is probably the biggest challenge in your position right now that you're facing?
So I would say at the moment, as a leader in this department, I want to say it's just making sure that what is working we continue, and then really analyzing our processes. And if there's something that's not working, we try to modify and just, having that flexibility to be able to pivot and do things differently. And then just the continuous improvement. You're always second guessing yourself on, are your counselors happy? Is everyone working to their maximum potential? So it's just a lot of those regular upkeep type of things.
Mm-hmm. And I know with a position like that, burnout an issue? I mean, do you have the issue with burnout with your staff at all?
So at the moment, I've really tried my best to consciously avoid that. I was a counselor for 10 years myself, and I did burn out a lot. And so that is one of the things that is very important to me that I always keep in the front of my mind, to not allow that to happen to my counselors. So, for example, there's a lot of other duties as assigned, as they're called in the education system, right? And so I have really tried my best to make sure that those things do not get put on to the counselor. So whether it be 504 plans, the counselors actually used to have to do that. In other schools, they have so many things, they wear so many hats, and then they end up not doing a lot of counseling. So it's been one of my main goals to make sure that the counselors don't have as much of those other duties, or to keep those to a minimum so they can really focus on what they do best, and that's counseling and supporting our students.
How, you said you've been doing this for 10 years. If you look back at when you first started as a counselor because technology and our society is changing so incredibly fast, do you see a change in the needs of the students in the last 10, 15 years versus what you saw when you first started?
Absolutely. There is such a disconnect between students and just the way that they really show up in the world. And there's a lot more behavior issues. There's, I think, technology, and then also with COVID, we did see a decline in so much social skills, academic skills. There was just this gap that created, and I think students, they're trying their best really to maneuver, but technology and the lack of parameters that a lot of them have when it comes to social media and what they have access to, it's really created this world that it's a little skewed. So for example, we have a lot of students that they don't take their academics seriously because they aspire to be influencers, or they aspire to go into the stock market. And so they don't think that college is important. And so they're just going to, go into stocks and make a ton of money and become millionaires. So we have a lot of that mentality where it's, you never want to shoot someone's dream down. But we'd like for them to remain realistic and to always have backup, right? Even as adults, we want to make sure that we have backups to everything that we do, and that we have somewhere to land if we end up falling. So that's one of the main things that we're seeing now.
Wow. Yeah. So do you think, I mean, I know a lot of it has to do with technology. Is the school doing anything about like access to technology or changing their policies about technology? I'm just curious if I've heard some schools, especially high schools, are like saying no cell phones at all. And they're like making the kids lock them in these things and, toss the key for the whole day. I don't know what's happening there.
So in our district, which is Broward County School District, this year they did implement a cell phone ban. And so what that means is no cell phones are allowed in class at all. Students cannot have them out unless a teacher instructs for them to do something on their phone for instructional purpose. But as far as in class, not at all. And they try to extend that into passing in between classes and lunch. That hasn't gone very well. So they kind of backtracked and they kept it as just in class. But I do think that there are more policies that are coming down. And I think that not just in our district and in our state in Florida, they are really, I did see some bills that are coming through that they're trying to pass to really control the cell phone use in schools a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and even if it's just a notification, it's like you're focused on this thing and then you get that notification and your focus shifts, right? And then it's really hard to get that, whatever you were focusing on back. It's almost like a form of its own ADD, it's like you're instilling attention deficit disorder by adding a device into what's going on. And it's really hard to stay focused on what's happening. So
absolutely. And now, you also add AI, right, to the mix. And so a lot of students are using an AI tool on Snapchat that I didn't even really know existed, but I have a middle schooler. So I kind of, have an ear in the streets. So I didn't even know that was a thing. And so a lot of students are using the AI tool in some of these apps to complete their work, to answer questions. And that, if you think about the long run on the effects that can have on just learning and being able to develop critical thinking skills, it's very, very scary.
So what advice would you give to a new educator heading into their first leadership position? What would you say, based on what you've learned and what you've done, what kind of advice would you give somebody who's never done this before?
Oh boy, I have so much. Where do I begin?
Right?
Like I said before, I did school counseling for 10 years and that was enough. And so going into a leadership role was kind of like the natural thing that I would be doing, right? I was a school counselor. I learned everything that I needed to learn. I've done it all. And so now I can step into a leadership role, no problem, and do it with flying colors. And that was not the case. And so what I would tell someone who is going into a leadership role is arm yourself. Arm yourself and make sure that your emotional state, that your mental state is ready to take on those challenges. And I'll tell you, I'll be very honest with you. A lot of the challenges were self-imposed. I was harder on myself than anyone was, my principal, my AP. I brought on all of that insecurity and lack of confidence and doubt onto myself. And so if I would have known that, I've read a great quote in the past that said it's okay to be a novice.
Yeah.
And because, I came into this role thinking I should know it all, like I should be an expert at this. And that was such a fallacy. That's like, your brain playing tricks on you that you should be something where it's okay to be new. It's okay to be in something that is just starting and you're trying to develop something along while developing yourself and your leadership style and who you are as a leader and all of that. So I would say things are going to be tough and it's all about your coping skills. And if you pour into yourself and make that a priority, you can pour into others. It's really about, instead of cowering, conquer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what,
And that self-care piece is really important, right? And yeah. Yeah. When you can acknowledge where your difficulties are, I think that's part of it too. Just going, I don't know everything, but I'm going to get it figured out. I'm going to do my best and keep moving forward. Another step, one more step.
absolutely,
One more step.
absolutely. And when I tell you the amount of confidence that comes from facing a challenge and coming out on the other side and saying, "Whew, that wasn't that bad." And
Right.
I did it and I succeeded at it. There is nothing like that amount of confidence. And so as you build and build, I mean, by year 3, 4, I was a completely different person. And so the growth that came with that was worth all of the turmoil that I went
Mm-hmm.
through. Um, so that is just something to look forward to for
Yeah.
new leaders, that, even if it's the worst at the moment, or you're going in with so much anxiety and so much fear and doubt, when you look at yourself 3 years down the line, you won't even recognize who you are. I always tell everyone it was like I had to be ripped to shreds to be born as a new person. And that, not just career me, it was as a mom, as a woman, as a wife, as someone just showing up in this world, a lot more confident, a lot more self-assured, and with a positive mindset, and joyful.
Right. Yeah. 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 Everything, no matter the challenge that you face, so much of it is exactly that. It's like, what is your mindset? Where are you at when you think about this? I mean, you can tear yourself down or you can lift yourself up. And having I tell people too, I said part of the reason I'm successful is because I put really smart people around me. And wise counsel, right? It's Proverbs 15:22 said, plans fail. It's on my computer. That's why I'm looking over here. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. So, putting wise counsel around you, that's something that stuck with me. Obviously, it's on my computer as a sticky note, but wise counsel, having, and recognizing when you need help. I think that's a big part of it too, is just acknowledging that you're not going to get 100% right all of the time, and having people there that you could, a mentor, having somebody that can answer questions and not judge you and give you good advice is so critical. So critical. So,
Absolutely. And, that's a great point that you bring up, because one of the biggest things for me was, I needed to find who I was when I no longer was servicing students. I came into a leadership position. I was no longer a counselor. I didn't have a caseload. And a
right.
lot of my identity as someone in this career, in this helping field, was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to find a new identity, and that was to empower my team members.
Right.
And so when you approach leadership as a team and not you and then everyone is down here,
Mm-hmm.
there was another quote. I love quotes, by the way. There was another quote that I saw that, leadership doesn't mean that you are above. It just means that you go first. And
Right.
so it's
Right.
more of like a guidance. So you're guiding these people. And like you said, it's so important because once you empower them and they can really take on a lot of things, it kind of relieves that burden on you. You have to trust your team to be able to execute all of the, the duties and the different things. And then you can lean on them as well.
Right.
I
Yeah.
tell them all the time, I don't do what you do every day. Is there a question that I may have? Absolutely. I don't know it all. There's things that I forget because I don't do it every day. And I have no problem and I have no, I'm not bashful in that. We're a team and I make that very, very clear. And as much as I am giving to them, they're also putting that into the mix.
So are there, do you struggle at all with keeping, you said you have a department of six, but, do you have issues with keeping great talent in place? Do you have, I mean, is it, or are you able to, not that if they leave, it's not your fault, but is it hard to recruit? Are you fully staffed consistently? How is that going for you?
So luckily, we have not had that many issues. We did have a promotion within the department, and so we had one position that we've had a bit of turnover in. And I think that the biggest thing that I learned from that is everyone is just so different in what they expect when they're coming into a role. And so when you have a well-established team and they're not all the same, right? But that how they work and their style, it's very, very important that when you do have someone new coming in, that you figure out what their style is and what no matter how experienced you think they may be, or, coming into a new school, a new setting is new in and of itself.
Right.
So
Right.
you have
That
to,
learning curve, right?
exactly. So there has to be that time where you really have to figure out what makes them tick, what type of training they want. I'm not a micromanager. And then some people like micromanagement, right? So you just have to kind of, they like big time structure. And so that is something that I would say is very important to keep in mind when you have someone new coming in to who they are as a worker and what do they need from you as their leader.
Yeah. Yeah. What makes them tick, right? Yeah. Don Miller wrote Story Brand, and I watched his podcast when I was starting my business. And one of the things that he said, which has stuck with me, is for every one criticism, just one criticism, you have to give four positives to just equal one criticism. And I was like, that is, it stuck with me because it's like, you can give constructive criticism, and even if it's constructive, it's still criticism, and people take that in and, oh, I did something wrong, right?
Yeah.
So you have to give them four positives just to equal that. And that was just like, wow, so I'm trying with my team to implement that and go, gosh, that was great. You did a great job there. Thanks for your help. Thanks for stepping up. And, it just, people need that, and in different ways. Exactly. Like how does that person accept criticism, and how do they accept praise? You may think you're praising somebody and it's not praise to them because they don't even accept that. So
Right.
It's interesting dynamic there. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So I have one other question that I always ask everybody, and it is, if you could miraculously solve one challenge in your school, what would you want to solve?
Wow, that's a great question. And it's so thought-provoking because it's not something that you really think about, but it's important. I think that I would tackle students being more likely to visit their counselor just on their own, for whatever issue that they're having. I think that especially is an issue for our younger students, our ninth graders coming in. Um, I don't think they've grasped that their counselor is really there for everything, not just a schedule change. So I think that I would tackle the engagement between student and counselor a lot more, and just I think help students understand the support that they can really receive from their school counselor.
Right. That trust, right? Helping them to understand that they can trust this person. That person's there for them, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, Pearl, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great conversation. Where would people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you or about the school that you work for at Pembroke Pines?
They can go and Google our website. It's the City of Pembroke Pines Charter Schools. We have several campuses across many levels, and I am at the Academic Village, but we have elementary schools, we have middle schools. So City of Pembroke Pines Charter Schools would be our website.
Well, Pearl, thank you for your time so much once again. And it's been a great conversation. I appreciate you joining us today on Brighter Together.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.